to choose the razor that is built for you. Light and regular and heavy, hey, slick shave for any beard. Olay!
I'm on the phone with Fred Jenkins, legendary boxing trainer and director of the ABC Gym. Hey, Mr. Jenkins, how you doing today, sir?
I'm good.
Let me ask you a question. I know that you worked with Russell Peltz for many years, and I'm just curious, sir, what's your estimation of him?
He's been pretty fair with me. I've been dealing with different promoters. I work with several promoters. I work with Lou Duva. I work with Don King. I work with several promoters. And they was all pretty fair with me.
That sounds like a winner to me, sir. Is that all you want to say about Mr. Peltz, sir?
One thing about Mr. Peltz, he's strictly business. And he want to make sure you and your fighter is working together, and most promoters don't really care.
Right.
But, usually trainer and fighter usually move together. When the fighters start moving separately, that's when you have conflict.
Right. And you got a lot of great fights with Russell Peltz. You have so many great fighters come out that ABC Gym of yours. And you had the great Rodney Moore, the great Charlie Choo Choo Brown. And speaking of the great Charlie Choo Choo Brown, sir, I sent you some pictures of you and Charlie. Did you get them?
Yeah.
I'm currently at the office of J. Russell Peltz, Philadelphia fight promoter, the Bob Arum and the Don King of Philadelphia. Russell, you insisted I call you Russell. I saw that your very first world champion was Marvin Johnson. Marvin Johnson affiliated with my last trainer, Leon Tabbs. When he won that world championship, how did you feel? Did you live vicariously through him? Did you actually win a world championship when Marvin Johnson won his first world championship?
Actually, that was the first of his three. I was in a hotel room at 10th and Packer because I couldn't make the trip to Sicily because 2 nights later Mike Rossman was defending his title at the Spectrum, so I had to stay behind. So I watched it on television with the late Stan Hochman. I forget who else was in the room. It was just the three of us watching it on television. And I went crazy. I jumped up, I ran out of the room. I got in my car, drove home, told my wife. It was December 2nd, 1978. Actually, yes, there it is. Okay. Yeah, he was my first world champion. It was a great feeling.
And you would go on to have a bunch of other world champions, being a boxing promoter. Years ago, I seen a movie. I can't remember the name of it. I think they was doing something on Don King. But Don King said, I go in the ring with the champion and I leave out the ring with the champion. So with that said, how many world champions have you had in your illustrious career as a fight promoter?
Oh boy, I don't know, Chuck. The business was different then. I mean, you consider Matthew Saad Muhammad my world champion because he had all his big fights leading up to and including the title fight. In other words, back in those days, promoters didn't really have their own fighters. You promoted the biggest fight, you bid on it, and you made money for the fight. Promotional contracts came into vogue after that, but so if I count Saad Muhammad, Marvin Johnson, Robert Hines, Choo Choo Brown, Gary Hinton, Arturo Gatti. Nobody really knows that I had 50% of the promotional contract on Arturo Gatti up until the Mickey Ward fights. Kasim Uma, Prince Charles Williams, the most recent Jason Sosa. Oh, best fighter ever had, Jeff Chandler. How could I forget him?
Charles the Hatchet Brewer.
Charles the Hatchet Brewer. I hope I haven't left anybody out.
Well, if you left anybody out, it wouldn't be.
Mike Rossman, do you count Mike Rossman? I don't know.
Yeah, Mike Rossman. I met Mike Rossman a couple of years. As a matter of fact, I think we were at the Benny Bisco Awards. Me and Buster Drayton. Buster's like a. Didn't you have Buster?
No. Buster only fought for me maybe a couple, 2-3 times.
Okay. Well, yeah, he and I were hanging out together, and I'd seen Mike hanging around, but I didn't know who he was because I mean, again, the Mike Rossman I knew was the Mike Rossman from the 80s and the 70s, and I'm standing there next to Buster, and Mike is talking to Buster, and he says, Chuck, he said, you know this guy right here, man? I said, nah. Should I know him? He said, that's Mike Rossman. I said, oh, you mean the Jewish bomber? And Mike and I were fast friends. I haven't seen him in years. He probably wouldn't remember me. But yeah, man, can you tell me about Mike? I personally, man, standing there talking to Mike with Buster, Mike is a guy that I really like. So anything enlightening or motivational that you can share with me about Mike?
Mike, he never really realized his full potential. That night he beat Galindez in New Orleans on the Ali Spinks rematch card was like the perfect fight because he went to Deer Lake to train for that fight. It was the only time really in his whole life he was probably in 100% condition. It's ironic that when he retired in 1983, when we were really together then, that year he fought 4 times and won them all. And he was only 27 years old.
Wow.
And he walked away. He had demons, Mike. Mike had trouble with alcohol. And he was never a big fan of boxing. And he just...
Really?
Yeah.
That's odd.
He just didn't like the business. He didn't listen. Can you imagine finding out that your father is getting paid on the side while you're fighting, money that should have been part of your purse?
Wow, yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine that, and you know, it soured him on the business.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, I was again, I saw boxing from both sides, and that would be rough. And while we're on the subject, let's get through it quickly. Can you point out? Can you tell me if you just shared one part of the ugliness of boxing? You mind sharing with me maybe about 1 or 2 other accounts where boxing really would put a sour taste in a person's mouth? And I know you saw a lot of it.
The first time I ever saw a manager do that was in 1972 when a fighter from Trinidad by the name of Matt Donovan came to Philly to fight Cyclone Hart. And I made the deal through George Gainford, who was the manager of Sugar Ray Robinson.
Right.
And we had agreed on, I know this because I'm putting it in my book, and I just went over this the other day. We had agreed on $3,500. Now, it doesn't sound like a lot now, but in 1972 it was a lot of money.
Right.
So I sent him, in those days you mailed the contract out, there were no fax machines. And the next thing I knew, he showed up in my office like a week later. I mean, you know, it's pretty impressive. George Gainford, you know, one of the best known managers in boxing. And he brought the contract back and he wanted me to change it. Instead of putting $3,500 on the contract, he wanted me to put $3,000 on the contract and pay him $500 on the side. Now, I can't be 100% sure if Gainford had a contract on Matt Donovan or not. My point is, on top of the $500, did he also take a piece out of Donovan's $3,000?
Right.
I can't say for sure.
Right.
But why didn't he make that deal with me when he first made the fight?
Right.
On the phone.
Right.
So Listen, I've seen promoters, I've seen managers double deal their own fighters. I've seen promoters, like if I have a fighter and Bob Arum wants to use the fighter. So it's like if MGM has an actor and Warner Brothers wanted to use the actor back in the old days, they had to pay MGM a fee.
Right.
So that's what it's like in boxing.
Okay.
The problem is, some of the promotional contracts are written so loosely that if Bob Arum were to say to me, and I'm just using Arum, it could be King, it could be Golden Boy, it could be Heyman. Let's say he tells me there's 100,000 on the table, okay? My contracts specify that if the fighter's under contract to me, meaning I've helped develop him, that out of that 100,000, I'm entitled to 20%. So I get 20,000 and the fighter gets 80,000.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
I've seen deals where the fighter gets 50,000 and the promoter gets 50,000.
Right.
And I say to them, I say, how do you get away? Because before the Muhammad Ali Act came into being, it was really the Wild West. Now, the problem with the Muhammad Ali Act, in the Muhammad Ali Act, and most fighters don't even know this, they're entitled to know how much money is on the table.
That is supposed to get 66%, if I understand correct.
That's out of their manager contract.
Okay.
I'm talking about if a fighter's under contract to me, he's entitled to know that there's 100,000 on the table.
Right, I got you.
It's a shame. Like a booking agent will call me up, and he'll say, how much is the fight worth? And I'll say to him, let's just say I'll say 10,000. He says, that's good. What about the fighter?
Wow.
You know? I mean, it's a joke. So I can't do it. I say to some of these guys, I'm not going to do that.
Right.
I just can't do that.
Right. Right. I heard you mention Bob Arum, and while we're on the subject, tell me about your relationships and your interactions, and if you can, sir, if any time you could add a humorous note to any of this, please do so. Bob Arum, Don King, Mickey Duff, and Lou Duva. These are the most prominent guys I might know. Shelly Finkel. But anything, you don't have to give them all to me, but any experiences that you had with any of these guys that stands out, and again, if it could be lighthearted, that would really be cool.
Oh boy, lighthearted experiences in boxing. That's not an everyday occurrence, Chuck. Mickey Duff, he's got a great line. He had two great lines, Mickey Duff. Because see, I'm a big, listen, the way I was raised, Chuck, is like I went to Temple, okay?
Right, got you.
So I bleed cherry and white.
Got you.
I don't care if the basketball team is 5-20, they're still my team.
Got you.
So in boxing, I believe that a fighter is with me from Jump Street, he should be with me at the end. And Mickey Duff says, if you want loyalty, buy a dog.
Damn.
Okay. I don't buy that.
Right.
It's a great line. It is a great line. And dogs are loyal. But then there was Marty Feldman who came along.
I remember Marty.
And
Yeah.
managed and trained Animal Fletcher, Augie Pantelis, and all those guys.
Don't forget Prince Charles Williams.
Right. The job he did with made Prince Charles Williams. Marty said, there's no such thing as 99%. He said, you're either 100% loyal or you're not. He said he would tell me, don't tell me you've been with me for 5 years and now you can't be with me this time because of extenuating circumstances. I'll never forget it. There's no such thing as 99%. So, that's the way I was raised.
Was Marty older than you, Russ?
Yeah, Marty, I guess Marty was a good 10 years older than I was, at least, yeah.
Right.
Because Marty was a pro. Marty was the main event on Benny Briscoe's pro debut in '62.
Damn.
So, yeah, Marty got to be was a good 10 years older than I was. Listen, what he did with Prince Charles Williams, What a resurrection job that was.
Hey, you know I liked about Marty, man. Whenever he see, he might say, "Hey, Chucky!" Or he might say, "Hey, Russell!" Yeah, Marty Feldman. Yeah, he was a great guy.
Say, Russell Peltz, born in Philadelphia so he could be near his mother.
Great.
Get the lines,
Great,
Marty.
great. Yeah, Marty was a cool. He was a cool guy. What is the best fight that you promoted, and the best fights that you ever saw? For example, Oscar Muniz and Johnny Carter. I don't know. I think you might have promoted that, but that was a great fight. That was a. You know, it wasn't comparable to Iran Barkley and Roberto Duran, but it was still a great fight.
Can't believe you remember that fight.
Oh yeah, I used to watch it on Prison Boxing, man.
Best fight I ever saw in person, I was fortunate to have promoted, which was in July 26, 1977 at the Spectrum, when then Matthew Franklin knocked out Marvin Johnson in the last round, the 12th round of their fight for the North American Boxing Federation light heavyweight title.
Wow.
It was just, there was no such thing as a feeling out round. It was just an incredible brawl, and was even on the scorecards, 1-1-1 going into the 12th round. When Matthew knocked him out, now if that's number one, Matthew and Richie Cates would be 1A.
Wow. Okay.
When they were each on the floor, and Matthew stopped him in the 6th or 7th round. I promoted that, and the first fight between Benny Briscoe and Cyclone Hart.
I heard that was a rough one.
10-round draw at the Spectrum in 1975. I mean, I was at, now as far as other fights that I saw that I didn't promote,
Right.
I was at the first Mickey Ward-Arturo Gatti fight.
Okay.
I'm trying to think, I think I was involved with Mickey Ward at the time. I was at the fight between, because I was working at Diego Corrales and Jose Luis Castillo, when Corrales was down twice like in the 10th round and got up and knocked Castillo out. But,
Right.
you know, been so many fights between people that even you wouldn't remember, like 6-round fights. I was at Ali Frazier 1,
Right.
which was the greatest, to me, probably the greatest sporting event ever, maybe the greatest social event ever. You know, certainly of my lifetime, of my generation.
Right. Right.
And so many great fights. You could just look at the films from the Blue Horizon
Yeah.
and just cover your eyes and I'll take that one.
Right.
And just great fights.
You promoted a lot of fighters, man. You've seen the best of them from the top to bottom. For example, if I could see 3 guys win championships, I would have liked to see Marvis Frazier win a world championship. I would have liked to see my friend Mike Brown win a world championship. And I would have liked to see Jesse Thunder Ferguson win championships. All personal friends of mine. You tell me, who are some guys that you would have really have liked to see win world titles?
Well, the obvious one's Benny Briscoe.
Ah, okay.
My first fighter. You know, you never fall in love with a fighter, but we did. We loved each other. And George Benton.
Ah,
There's a
okay.
guy who fought, I looked it up, the middleweight title changed hands 22 times during his career.
Damn.
And this was before the bullshit alphabets. And not only did he not win a title, he never even got a shot, even
Wow.
though he beat Joey Giardello, Jimmy Ellis, and Freddie Little, all 3 world champions at different times. So I'm trying to think, you know, guys that came close but couldn't. Briscoe had 3 shots, Benton had none. I don't know.
That's all right.
Tony Thornton, the puncher.
Tony Thornton, yeah, he was a great guy.
Tony
Yeah.
Thornton was the. I got a story. You got time?
No, I'm good.
Tony Thornton was managed by Joe Gramby. You know who Joe Gramby was?
I don't know him. No.
Just to qualify it, I could qualify it by saying he was the greatest black manager ever in Philly, but I'd say he was the greatest manager ever. He managed Bob Montgomery, the lightweight champ from the 40s, Tex Cobb, Richie Cates, Tony Thornton, Charlie Scott. Anyway, he managed Tony Thornton, probably on a handshake, and I had a handshake to promote Tony Thornton. So Granby died in 1990, and Tony came over here. And we walked, when it was about 2-3 blocks from here, we walked to the funeral home. And when this is one of my favorite stories.
Okay.
When the funeral was over, he came back here. He said, "What do you want to do as far as my career now?" Because his manager was gone. I said, "I'll tell you what, I'll promote you and I'll manage you for 10%. So we shook hands. And he went home, and I started thinking about it. I said, Jesus, Russell, 10%? You're going to manage him and you're going to promote him for 10%? So I called him on the phone. I said, Tony, I think I sold myself short. You know what he told me?
Go ahead.
He said, I think so too.
Yeah.
Who would say that? What fighter would say that? He said, what do you think is fair? I said, 20% is fair. He said, you're right. So that was the extent of our contract, that phone call. And he wound up getting 3 title shots, Chris Eubank, James Toney, Roy Jones. And whenever the guy would come in to pay, he'd say, give the money to Russell, and he'll take care of it. So a few years later, after he lost to Eubank and Toney, he hadn't fought after Toney for a year. He called me up. He said, listen, there's 2 lawyers in town. They want to manage me. They say you don't have any juice left. This was like 1994. I said, I'll tell you what, Tony, have them give you $5,000. Just tell them to give you $5,000, I'll walk away. Mm-hmm. So he calls me back a week later. He said, they won't give me $5,000. I said, have them give you $2,500 and I'll walk away. Mm-hmm. So he calls me back a week later. He says, they won't give me $2,500. I put him in a fight at the Blue Horizon with a guy named Lindsey Morgan, who was like 25 wins and 25 losses.
Damn.
Tony got the decision, but he didn't. It was,
Right. Hometown.
So, and it was a terrible fight. Main event at the Blue Horizon. And people started calling me on the phone. What are you doing? Why do we have to watch this guy again? Because, we were selling out every show, and going to the Blue Horizon was really hot.
It was an event, yeah.
In the 90s.
Yeah.
I put him in with a guy named Darren Zenner from New York for the vacant USBA super middleweight title. He was sensational. He knocked Zenner out in the 2nd round.
Cool, right.
He became the #1 contender for Roy Jones, and his next fight was $250,000. His last fight. And these guys wouldn't give him $2,500. And his hands, Tony had bad hands. Right. He went into listen, he wouldn't have beat Roy Jones with good hands.
Right.
But he went in with bad hands, and he knew it. But for $250,000 in 1995, he wasn't going to walk away from the fight.
Right.
The saddest thing about Tony was that he got killed on a motorcycle.
I didn't even know he was dead.
About 10 years ago.
Damn.
Not even 10 years. He was crossing the Ben Franklin Bridge, I think, or the Walt Whitman, and on his motorcycle, and a bus sideswiped him.
Man, staying on that subject, we lost this. First of all, this is news to me that Tony Thornton has deceased. He's a guy that I knew from the Champs Gym. Speaking of fighters that died on motorcycles, let's talk about James Schuler. Let's talk about Andre Prophet. I believe you did have Andre Prophet, yes? I remember when you guys were developing him. Let's have it. Those guys there.
I don't think Schuler ever fought for me. I didn't have much to do with Schuler. I think when he made it to a certain level, he was handled first by Butch Lewis. And then I don't know if Lewis was involved when he fought Tommy Hearns. I'm not sure. But listen, guys get knocked out in 1 round.
Right.
Who got knocked out in 1 round? Jack Dempsey, Max Schmeling, Bob Montgomery, Ken Norton, Michael Spinks. I mean, some of the greatest fighters ever, Emil Griffith,
Right.
Joey Maxim,
Right.
they got knocked out in 1 round. It happens. You catch a guy warming up. Andre the Prophet, boy, he was good size. I used to watch him spar in Prince Charles Williams at Champs on 24th Street, boy.
Last time.
You couldn't tell who was the champ,
Yeah.
who was the young guy coming up.
Yeah.
He had such potential, and then he was scheduled to fight for me at the Northeast Armory out on the Boulevard in August of '88, and I got a call about a week ahead of time saying he got killed in a motorcycle accident. What a whew, unlimited potential, and he was still raw.
I think he was only had maybe like 11 or 12
Yeah,
fights.
that's about it.
Yeah. Tell me some great boxing trainers. You often hear people talk about the fighters.
Okay, well, first of all, I'm not a big proponent of the word great,
Okay.
but
How about good?
whoever I leave out will be upset. I think Jimmy Arthur, one of the
Okay.
most underrated boxing trainers of my time, who made Tyrone Everett.
Ah.
Outstanding trainer. Marty Feldman. When I put him in as the trainer for Prince Charles Williams, coming off a loss to Marvin Johnson and going nowhere with like a 12-4 record, that's when I signed Prince Charles Williams, and Marty was the trainer. It was years and years and years before Prince Charles lost another fight, won the world title. I'm just keeping this to Philadelphia.
Okay.
See, a lot of trainers are good trainers, but they're not good managers.
Right.
Okay? Eddie Futch was as good a trainer as there ever was, but he was not a great manager. But he helped me a lot. So, Eddie Futch, I can include Eddie Futch because he was from Philly.
I never knew that. I didn't know
No,
Eddie.
I mean, he lived in Philly for years.
Okay.
He was training Frazier.
Okay.
Willie the Worm Monroe, Bobick, Wayne Bobick. And of course he brought Hedgeman Lewis here to train for a while. I couldn't tell you enough about Yank Durham because, you know, he died in 73 and I don't know.
Yank was the guy that trained Joe, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was as real as manager. Yeah. But before Joe, I don't know. George Benton.
Yeah.
George
Okay.
Benton is as good as any trainer of my lifetime.
Okay.
He was George Benton. I wish, you know what, one of my regrets, as much time as I spent in the gyms with all the old timers
Right.
when I was a kid, I didn't spend enough time with them. I didn't sit there and talk old boxing history with them. I got some stories, but not enough.
Right. Yeah, I understand.
Joe Granby, before he became a manager, solely a manager, was an excellent trainer. I don't know. I'm just thinking of all the trainers that are going to be pissed off on their knees.
So I didn't hear you say anything about Al Fennell or Augie Shemeka, sir.
They were Al Fennell. Yeah, he developed Robert Hines.
Robert Bam Bam Hines, sir, a man that you took to the junior middleweight championship, sir.
What a night that was to get off the floor twice.
Yeah.
And the ironic thing was it was exactly 1 year after Prince Charles Williams got off the floor twice to beat Bobby Ches.
I didn't know that. I didn't know Chaz had him down.
Oh yeah, he was out. It was over, just like Hines.
I gotta watch that fight.
Yeah. Second or third round. But you know, Al Fennell, well, he passed away young.
Tucci Gorman, sir.
Tucci Gordon trained Gary Hinton.
The executioner hitting, sir. You're leaving.
We won the title in Lucca, Italy. Lucca, Italy.
Also, how would you like to be remembered when it's all said and done, man? At the very end of it, how would you like to be remembered?
Just the guy who made good fights. That's all. I tell new promoters, even though I discourage them from getting into business because it's so tough, I say just make good fights, because even if you don't make it, people can never criticize you for making bad fights. Just listen, and I've said this for years, people are bitching today about paying $15 to go see a movie. I said, we're charging people $30, $50, $60, $80, $100 to see a fight. They don't want to see Russell's fighters knocking out all the other guys in 1 or 2 rounds. They don't want to see the guy in the red corner winning every fight.
Right.
They don't want to see, people want to see competitive fights.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're more interested in seeing competitive fights than they should be, than they are in seeing big names blow over somebody. I just want to, that's all.
Okay.
My name is Eric Turner, and I'm a boxing fan and former amateur boxer. I met Russell Peltz through a young lady by the name of Brittany Rogers. Russell Peltz was her mentor, and she was promoting her first fight. I was still in the Army, and she asked me to sing the national anthem at her first boxing match.
Oh, okay, cool.
So I thought I have a little bit of vocals going on too.
Okay, a singer.
I sung the national anthem on the Army base and the Little League World Series. So if you need somebody to sing a tune, I'm your man. Russell Peltz became the director for boxing at the Spectrum.
Okay.
And that's where, his reputation built from there. Some of his prominent fights were Eddie Briscoe, Marvin Hagler, Boogaloo Watts, Marvin Hagler. And the one that had the most crowd indoors as a boxing event was Tyrone Everett and Escalera. Yeah, that was a great fight. After that, he went on to the Blue Horizon. And the Blue Horizon was very successful. When you say boxing in Philly, Russell Peltz is the first name that comes to mind.
Home country.
Into the first round, McCarthy says he's always fighting bigger guys.
Everybody that likes to get hit in the body. But for a shorter fighter, it's easier to reach down to that body rather than to try to go up to the head. Boom, stinging right hand.
Champ, give me some of your experiences with Russell Peltz, boxing promoter, the man, the myth, the legend.
Oh, well, you don't want my experiences. I told you that. My experiences with Russell, Russell's a very honest and good fella. But I don't know about how he's not the best guy at protecting his guys per fighter. I think one time I was getting ready for a fight and we never, Russell thought he was an actual old school fighter because he handled like Benny Briscoe and all these guys who never wanted to watch tape or anything like that. So Russell felt as though he didn't want any music when you walked into the room. And when the first time I had a fight coming up, Russell offered me a tape to watch my opponent. And I said, oh, wow, that's weird. I said, it's very unusual. So the wind-up is I go and fight the guy. Here it wasn't even him. It was his brother. So that's the kind of promoter Russell was back in the day. Talk about spoiled with fighters. Yeah, but a very honest fella. And we really enjoyed our association with him.
He told me something about Troy Dorsey. What did he mean? I told him don't be setting me up to get me in no trouble with you, man. But what's the story with Troy Dorsey?
That's the story.
Oh, that's the Troy Dorsey story.
Yeah. That's just, he said we never, we never watched any tapes, and we never had that. And Russell, like I said, the one time tells me about fighting a guy and he's going to give me a tape of the guy. Here he sends me up the guy's brother. And Russell says, they fight the same anyway.
J. Russell Peltz, the boy wonder promoter. Born with a silver spoon mouth. Good guy. Let me say this about Russell. Russell and I go way back 50 years. We had our arguments. We did a lot of business together. One thing about Russell, he may be cheap, but if he give you his word on something, you convince him to give his word is good. And what I always liked about Russell, when your fighter came out of that ring, my girl Maureen that was winning at the time, she had your check waiting for you. One like some promoter, you got to wait the end of the night. Mm-hmm. The only mistake that I see that Russell made in the 50 years that I've known him, how you let your own fighter get beat in his own neighborhood.
Who we talking about?
Talking about Tyrone Evans.
Oh yeah, he spoke about that. Yeah, he actually spoke about that. Well, Russell said he was still young and naive, man. As a matter of fact, he said when the guy was reading the sports card, the announcer, Russell was like, "Man, this idiot is reading the damn wrong. He got it backwards." So Russell was very disappointed about that loss with Tyrone Everett.
Listen, man, you know I got a lot of calls, man. That you got 1,000 names. What is your name? Hobbs, Joe, Xander, Zulu. Who you with? Don't get Carmichael, somebody?
No. Let me
explain this to me, because I got to justify just when people see this, man.
All right, let me clear this up. The government. I can say the government because nobody's looking for me. The name is Joe Alexander Hobson. Joe is my first name. Alexander is my middle name. The streets call me Chucky for whatever the reason. That's what they call me. They call me Chucky. That's my nickname. Where it came from, I have absolutely no idea. Okay? In the professional setting, I was either Joel or Joe when I drove tractor trailers. Chuck Hobson when I fought. Once I retired from the Air Force back in 04, and at some point, man, I started going through a midlife crisis, man. I decided I wanted to be an entertainer, a comedian. And I said, okay, I could be Joel Hobson on stage. I could be Chuck Hobson. I could be Joe. Then I said, damn, you know what? I never used my middle name in my life. I never used the name Alexander.
Right.
And then I'm thinking, I said, well, I don't think I want to be Alexander Hobson, but Xander. That's a cool ass name, Xander.
Yeah, it works. You got the Xander bar, got the Xander drink.
Right. So that's pretty much the.
Yeah, because my girl was wonderful. What your name was, man?
Right.
My girl, I don't know.
Bright lights and promises, a pocket full of dreams. That's what they paid me to be. I am a hometown queen. Honey, would you sing it just for me? When I was good, then I was bad. I never thought I'd end up this way, with no dreams to hide me, bright lights to guide me. How long does it take to make the grade? Everywhere I hear a ringing in my ears, drummer, let the music play. Give me small town blues, make it loud, make it do.
You gotta say bam.
Bam!
There you go.